I'm here in Limerick today at St John's Castle for a seminar organised by the National Union of Journalists and the Public Relations Institute of Ireland on fake news. So in today's vlog you're going to find out what is fake news, why would people even bother creating fake news, and what are the solutions.
JSB Talks Digital.
Hasn't fake news always been around though? We've always had propaganda, misinformation and myth-truths. Has Kellyanne Conway, the US President's media advisor, actually just made fake news famous? And her comment when she said that it's not fake news, it's alternative facts. And of course that went viral. So some of the issues and matters that were raised at today's seminar organised by the NUJ and the PRII are: who is responsible for fake news and why would you do it anyway? So some of my observations: clickbait is a thing. Do you know if the more traffic that you get to a website, the more advertising revenue that you can generate? So there are people creating fake news solely for financial gain. When it comes to politics, there are some people who are generating fake stories to discredit politicians so that they obviously discredit them and try and get some votes. Another thing about fake news that we should think about is, well, we're all citizen journalists. We all have the opportunity and the possibility to create news. I'm creating news with this vlog and also on my podcast and on my blog across my social networks. So is what JSB actually says true? Well, I used to be a journalist and I do subscribe to the Code of Ethics for the PRII. So everything that I do produce is researched, I check my sources, and I make sure that my community, what they're hearing, is absolutely true. So from that point of view, I think we all, as citizen journalists, as users of the social web, we actually ask questions and we check and we double check the facts from any news source or quasi-news source that we're getting it from. So I'm going to speak to a number of people and they're going to give me their views on what is fake news, why fake news, and how can we solve the problem. Colin Ward, you're the chairperson of Irish Southwest from the National Union of Journalists, co-organising the event on fake news today in St John's Castle in Limerick. What was the motivation to firstly organise the event?
Well, I suppose it ties in with an NUJ campaign called Local News Matters, and that's about highlighting the value of local media, of quality local media. And obviously there are a lot of challenges at the moment facing local media, whether it's the decline in print sales and print readership, revenues from advertising are falling, and obviously the growth in online media then. And I suppose one of those challenges is what we call fake news. And again, the sense that people are losing faith in a lot of the news they're consuming, that they're getting a lot of it online, and the ability maybe to distinguish what's fact and what's got serious journalistic background from what's being put out maybe by sinister fake news sites, are more often just, I suppose, just lazy, kind of journalism, or kind of social media driven clickbait, if you like, that kind of thing. So we just thought that a discussion on fake news would tie in with the Local News Matters Week. So we got a great panel of speakers. We had Cian Connaughton from the PR Institute of Ireland, who co-sponsored the event with us. We had Emma O'Kelly from RTE's education correspondent, and we had Fiona McGarry from Clare FM, who's a very respected regional journalist. So each of them were able to give their own perspective on the discussion and on where, I suppose, media is going right now in Ireland.
So in terms of journalists, I used to work as a journalist, and yes, it is many years ago, but a journalist is a highly respected professional. And, there's that sort of kudos that, if a journalist says something, then it must be true. And if it appears in a TV station, radio outlet or print newspaper, then it's true. Do you think that journalists are now competing with new digital influencers who are self-made essentially, not trained as journalists and who are building up an online tribe.
Oh, there's no doubt that there is an element of competition there. But that's not to say necessarily that, a journalist, for example, couldn't be a digital influencer. I think, one of the themes that's emerging in, I suppose, the online sphere and the digital sphere, it's about credibility and it's about trust. And I think while we talk about digital influencers, it's a relatively new phenomenon, and maybe it hasn't evolved to the point yet where people can start really, determining whether they can trust someone who just happens to have 50,000 or 500,000 or whatever it might be followers. Whereas coming from, I suppose, the print media background, as I do originally, you're trained in a certain way, and you're trained to analyse the facts and to question what you're being told and so forth. And there's, I suppose, we live in a world where institutions, in a way, are becoming. There's a lot more cynicism about institutions, of which I suppose the traditional media is one. But I suppose to a certain extent that institutional background does give you an element of trust and credibility that was there, and we would hope that, as journalists, we need to work hard to ensure that credibility remains, so that we can stand on our own merits and say, well, we have researched this story, we have put the work in, and we're not just taking what we're being told as fact, and we have transparency in terms of how we work and so on and so forth. So I think that's probably the challenge for, if you like, traditional media now, and for journalists who work in that area, and also for journalists who, I suppose, are moving into the digital sphere too.
So journalism still has a massive role to play. I guess the guardians of the truth is essentially what a journalist has been and still is, and I think that role is ever more relevant today. So Colm, thank you so much. Well done in the event, and thanks for talking to us. Kieran Connaughton, you are the President of the Public Relations Institute of Ireland and co-organisers of the Fake News Seminar in Limerick today. What motivated you to organise this event?
So, a couple of things, Joanne. We obviously are very interested working in public relations to engage with journalists and the media. So I think it's a great opportunity to exchange views and really get to see what their interests are, what their take on such an important topic is. And then secondly, I think it's really important to provide events like this for Institute members outside of Dublin. The members of the Public Relations Institute work all around Ireland, all different types of communication areas, so it's really good that we're getting the chance to get down here to Limerick and hold a really attractive event. And then I suppose finally I'd say fake news is something that's really topical, and it's something that people, I think it's still a bit, one of the things that came out today was it's still a bit undefined as to exactly what fake news is. So I even, my understanding of fake news and all the variables at play and the factors that are kind of relating to it, I increased my knowledge of it in my preparation for this week, and then sitting in today I could see everyone else is kind of really just trying to get their heads around it. So it was great to get in and have a bit of a contribution at such a kind of an early stage when people are getting their head around it. And
I think it's actually one of the first big conversations that certainly I've come across around fake news in this country. We see it being spoken online in the UK and the US. It's maybe got more attention. But do you think that fake news is going to become a problem for Ireland, for the institutions of the state, for politicians, and even for us in the communications industry?
Look, I think one of the things that came out from today's discussions were that fake news can encompass a lot of things, I suppose, depending on how you define it. But I think the more important issue rather than fake news is the issue around the types of, I suppose, content that media is producing, the types of media people like, how relevant, and how the types of whether it's online, whether it's mobile, whether it's print. It's having a good and open debate about what type of media people want, and the pressures that are on media, and I suppose the way that communications professionals like ourselves interact with that, and so everyone's got a clear understanding of what the challenges are and what the best solutions then to propose are.
I think that the whole communications and even media industry is in complete flux at the moment. They're trying to transition to an online world. And do you think that fake news might become something of the past? I mean, one of the panelists said, we've always had fake news. We've had propaganda, myths, truths. Is it just that we're in the age of digital that suddenly it's getting more traction and, a lot more traffic?
Yeah, I would look at fake news. I would look on fake news as being that phenomenon where I suppose you've had stories being produced in, for argument's sake, or to give you one example, Eastern Europe, which are clearly, totally made up out of thin air, no factual basis at all, and then sold to make money online. That is my definition of fake news. I suppose there's a lot of other wider issues about how technology is introduced. One of the NUJ members I know today was talking about, sure, anyone can be a journalist and produce content now with the age of Periscope, with Twitter, with Instagram, and that's a fair comment. But I think one of the key points that I'd stress is that professional bodies like the PRII, like the NUJ, we have standards, clear standards about honesty, integrity, values, truth, and that's standards that we clearly defined to our members subscribe to, and they make a real important contribution, whether it's the NUJ members or whether it's the PRI members, to holding those values true to whatever work they produce, whatever content they produce.
Cian Collington, thank you. And that's a very good point to, I guess, finish up with. I mean, I'm a content producer. I have, the podcast and the blog and the video blog as well on YouTube. But I still hold true to those NUJ and those PRI principles that even though I'm a content producer not working for a media outlet, I want people to hear and to read and to watch the truth that I'm producing. And I think we all have a personal responsibility if we're contributing to stories online, whether it's on threads, on news blogs, or even on social media, that we all take that responsibility and share the truth and not the fake news. Thank you, Cian. Carol Byrne, you're a journalist with the Clare Champion and attended the seminar today on fake news. From your perspective, what do you think is the main problem around trying to combat fake news as a journalist?
Okay, there are a lot of issues, I suppose, really that present itself when it comes to fake news. A lot of what I find in my role is a lack of resources. We struggle to meet all of the deadlines that we have between our regular markings like council meetings, court reports. We've reduced staff numbers, and then we're also expected to disseminate across social media platforms and also websites. So there is a lot of reliance on the journalists now to be a jack of all trades, and in that kind of environment we're caught in a situation where we do find ourselves relying on general press releases, on I suppose soft news, and there is this lack of time to source the information and to fact check. And while everybody in journalism strives to reach the truth, there is this acceptance that, look, this will fill a hole, this will do. And I think the more that happens, I suppose the more it impacts local news. And also I suppose there's another problem as well in media ownership. So currently I work for a family-run newspaper, which is a huge advantage in this current environment. And unusual, absolutely. And I suppose we set our own news agendas, and we do strive for accuracy. But we have a situation now where local newspapers are being run by big conglomerates, and there is less of an emphasis on truth and more on populist views and on furthering the specific news organisations' agendas, and that has to change. And I think that's something that we have to look at. I think our politicians need to look at, and I think the communities, the people themselves who consume news, need to look at that as well.
And also, media outlets are commercial entities. So people who are making decisions in boardrooms are interested in the bottom line. We're also living in the age of social media and clickbait, where you can actually amass massive amounts of numbers to your website if you have the right headline and have the story. Do you think that is compromising and diluting news too, where decision makers are looking at the vanity metrics and not looking at the quality of the story?
Yeah, there's the vanity metrics that are involved, all right, but you also have to you have to look at the bottom line. If they're about generating money, this is free news, and you have to say at what point do you start making money out of that. And yes, you can disseminate all of this populist opinion, but and it may help your readerships, but really what people want when they turn to a news organisation is they want truth, they want fact. Yes, they might want the soft news elements thrown in as well, but I think there's a real need for people to kind of, I suppose, just not expect things that for free, and to require there be some investment in what they produce, and some investigation into what they're producing. As regards social media and digital platforms, I think nobody has found the formula to make money from them yet. If and when they do, I think it'll be a different business, but there is no formula yet, and until that's found, I think we're in a very difficult market, really.
Carol Bowden, thanks for talking to me.
Thank you, Joanne. Thanks.
Another interesting point that I rose in the seminar today is that we have the rise of the digital influencer. Who is a digital influencer? Well, JSB often says that she's a digital influencer because what I talk about, people listen and they ask me for my opinion. I've also built up a tribe or an online community made up of 35,000 people across all my platforms. When I worked as a journalist, I had huge influence. I had the power to put the story on air on the radio station or put that story in the bin. I wonder if journalists hold the same power now as they did before. If you consider the role of a digital influencer, they might have a tribe of 1 million people, and those people are listening to what they're saying. I think there's a big opportunity and even a responsibility on journalists to even manage their own online reputation, increase their digital profile and give their opinion online, and build up a tribe for them that will also leverage the tribe of the media organisation that they work for. There was also some conversation about media ownership and how big conglomerates are actually controlling the media for a specific agenda. That's a topic that I'm not going to get into. It's a bigger one than I can handle on this vlog. But I think from the point of view of journalists, they need more training, they need to be upskilled in digital, because guess what? You actually can control what's on the internet. And, you know, fake news, I'm hoping to get this article, this vlog and the podcast ranking on page 1 of Google when it comes to fake news and when I localise it to Ireland. So lots of training needed, lots of media literacy needed for younger generations coming up. And finally, I think that we all have a responsibility, as I said earlier, to check and double check the news and the news sources and where we're getting from.
JSB Talks Digital.
Give me a like, subscribe, and get JSB Talks Digital, the vlog, every Monday morning in your inbox. And please do share with your friends. They'd really appreciate it.